If you have $44 billion and you use it to buy Twitter, you make bad decisions.
Yeah.
We have all the information we need.
Right.
44 billion. We could, I mean,
But he
put a
world
dent
hunger.
in world
He
hunger.
doesn't know. No, but he doesn't know what to do with. It's the same as that other
change.
The two of them went into space because they have no other ideas about what to do with their money. Oh.
If you have $44 billion and you use
I just want to hear it again.
Twitter, you make bad decisions.
Yeah.
We have all the information we need.
Hold on. The emphasis. How do I get back here? The emphasis on Twitter.
You make bad decisions.
On Twitter.
$4 billion.
On Twitter.
And you use it to buy Twitter, you make bad decisions.
Can you imagine the pompous? Where am I looking? By the way, you're going to see the fro grow in real time. So I got off the treadmill. I'm not sweating too much. I have cooled down sufficiently. If you have $44 billion and you use it to buy Twitter, and you all made fun of me when I put a H in Whitmer, at least there's an H in Whitmer. There's no H in Twitter. Can you imagine the pompous audacity of people who have not accomplished, love him or hate him, he's accomplished something through crook or through hook. I don't know if that's the proper expression. Love him or hate him, like the way he made his fortune or think he's a fraud in the way he made his fortune. He's made at least a couple of right decisions to have a wealth, to be sufficiently wealthy to buy Twitter for $44 billion. Get her. Oh. People haven't seen Winnie in a little while. Look at this little guy. Oh, yes, thank you. I gave him a bath yesterday. But it's like, and then the rationale, because, so hold on, I'm gonna add this back to the stream. I'm not gonna play it again, people, because it'll drive people nuts. But I put out a tweet yesterday. How do I get back here so I can see it? Okay, here we go. I put out a Twitter tweet. I put out a tweet yesterday, and I had to correct a material error in it, because this illustrates why it was relevant. Let me see, where is it? Why we got this British guy who went to Walmart and can't distinguish between a pellet gun. Oh, forget it. I can't find it. It doesn't matter. I basically said if you, there's nothing better than people who haven't made $44 billion telling someone who spent $44 billion how they should have spent their money. And then the justification. The justification is he could have put a dent in world hunger. He might have been able to put a dent in. By the way, Elon Musk, I believe, has made an offer to solve world hunger, and it involves a little bit of transparency as to what the actual people, not with billions of dollars, not with trillions of dollars, with hundreds of trillions of dollars, are doing with our money that they take for the purposes of solving the world's problems. The View, these hosts look to a private individual who's made a supreme fortune through ingenuity or craftiness or whatever, and they're looking to him and blaming him for not solving world hunger when you have an existing government with trillions of dollars in its coffers who's tasked with doing that doesn't do it. I mean, there's nothing better than, and I won't say that they haven't accomplished anything, because I guess metric-wise, they've accomplished more than me. I'm sitting in my basement yelling at a camera. So I won't say that they haven't accomplished anything in their lives. They've accomplished something. They're making millions of dollars a year on The View. Personally, I'd rather be in my basement with the company of you through my camera. But they're looking at this guy saying, if you have 44 billion, you make bad decisions. Yeah, go ahead and tell Elon Musk how he makes bad decisions. And what is so stupid about it, and I'm sorry to use the word stupid, is to buy all of Twitter for $44 billion. If it's a bad decision, it's no worse of a decision for any of the investors in Twitter. It's not a better decision because you've only invested $1 million in it. It's not a better decision because you've only invested $10,000 buying some common stock. If you think it's a bad company, you are basically saying everybody who's invested in that company has made bad decisions. What are you eating? Those are my headphones. Crazy? Like dollar store headphones. It's idiocy with lack of insight. It is arrogant pomposity with lack of insight. Okay, tonight's stream is going to be amazing. It's actually been in the making for a long time. A while back, I'm in tune with the gossips of the legal verses, but not of all of them. And it was in the context of a few defamation lawsuits against the New York Times that we kept noticing. Everybody will probably remember some super chats from one Ariadna, influences by Ariadna, which I had no idea what it was at the time, about her defamation lawsuit against the New York Times. Now, I'm going to bring this one up just because I was going to start with this one, but I figured we're going to get to it sooner than later in the stream, so I could start with something totally unrelated. Yeah, let's go with this one. Let's go with this one, because this is going to be relevant for tonight's discussion. I'm not just playing this. I'm not playing this to make fun of somebody. I'm playing this because this is going to be relevant to determining one of two things: either total lack of sincerity in the emotions displayed in this 10-second bit, or total hypocrisy if these emotions are real. This is one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't circumstances, and I'll play it. Here, take a listen. If I can play it.
You feel like any little piece of information that gets out on you will be used by the worst people on the internet to destroy your life. And it's so isolating.
And terrifying.
It's horrifying. I'm so sorry. It's overwhelming. It's really hard. You feel like any...
So that's Taylor Lorenz, for anybody who doesn't know. Journalist for the New York Times, Washington Post. I'm not exactly sure which or both or whatever. I'm seeing some people in the chat saying, so fake. This is one of those situations where it's either fake, in which case it's bad, or it's authentic, in which case it's bad, given that a few short weeks later, this individual goes out and doxes someone, but how? Or at the very least, puts on blast the private information of the creator of Libs of TikTok. We'll get there. Okay, and I see Ariadna is in the backdrop, so I'm going to bring her in 30 seconds. Standard disclaimers. First of all, thank you for the super chats. YouTube takes 30% of super chats. If you don't like that, we're simultaneously streaming on Rumble. Rumble takes 20% of their equivalent called Rumble Rants. If you want to support Robert Barnes and me, you can find us at Locals, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. If I don't get your super chat and you're going to be miffed if I don't bring it up, I can't even bring that one up. Don't give it. I don't like people being miffed. And just a bit of news, stay tuned. I'm going to be live streaming from Ottawa tomorrow. I'm going to go hear the hearing for Randy Hillier. It starts at 2:00 from what I understand. I'm going to go early, live stream from Ottawa, because you cannot live stream or record or broadcast from the court. Do a little live stream beforehand and a live stream follow-up afterwards. So stay tuned. It's going to be awesome. Hold on one second. Let me just do this before I bring in Ariadna, who's been very patient in the back. Okay, here we go. This is what I mean. If I bring it up, I no commitment to bring up or read. The hubris of anyone telling a billionaire how to spend his money. Why aren't those millionaires giving their money to feed the hungry? I'm disgusted by the View, and they have bad ideas too. I agree. But they don't have billions. Don't tell them how to spend their money. Auto celebrations Friday and Saturday with church Sunday. I'm also going to be in Ottawa this weekend. Okay. Ariadna, get ready. Ariadna's coming in. We're going to bring out Taylor Lorenz. I keep getting messed up on the names. Okay. This is going to be amazing. Ariadna, how goes the battle?
How are you?
It finally...
Thank you for having me here. I know.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming, and thank you for being patient, because we've been talking about this back and forth every now and again. We say we're going to do it, and then it's been like 6 months practically.
I think it's okay, because honestly, I was really scared to ever talk in public about this, even though it was something I had conviction about, because the New York Times is frankly kind of scary and powerful, and so is Taylor Lorenz. But now that sort of she's kind of exposed who she is, I feel a lot better, just talking about it openly, and I have a pending case right now, so I have to be somewhat careful of that. But I do think it's important that people understand sort of what happened to me, and how it could affect them, and really, defamation and the powerful media companies that are very hard to hold accountable.
Well, and we're going to get there because the thing is this, I read proceedings, you get it, you read allegations, but ultimately you don't know anything from anything. You don't know who's who. You don't know who to believe. And everyone gets dirty in battle and you don't know who to trust, except whether or not people decide to trust you. I think now the consensus in the social media verse is nobody trusts Taylor Lorenz, and they know who she is, which might allow people to deduce whether or not you're being sincere, honest, accurate in your allegations against her in the New York Times. Barnes is in the house. I'm going to bring him in here. Hold on. How do we do this? Like this? Do we like this? I think we decided we liked this better, and I'll go on the bottom section so that I can put the chats this way. Yep. And Viva, I recently sued the airline because my luggage was misplaced. Turns out I lost my case. I get jokes today, people. Taylor, Ariadna, and I said, I'm telling
you can call me Ari if it's easier.
That might be easier.
But you did pronounce my name right, so thank you.
Well, I knew an Ariadna it was Ariadne back in the day, but okay, elevator pitch before we get into the basic stuff and then into the meaty stuff of the day. Elevator pitch as to who you are before we go back to the past.
Okay. Yeah. So my name is Ariadna Jacob, and I was actually born in Mexico City, and both my parents are Mexican, and my father died when I was 2 years old. So we moved to the United States, and my mom actually married an American, and he adopted me. And when I was around 4, and so that's why my last name is Jacob. And basically, I was a big computer nerd since high school. Before YouTube, I was editing videos, and I would have to beg my parents to buy me bandwidth so I could upload my videos that I edited on the computer, and share them before YouTube. So I pretty much got started in digital in the year like 2001, and I was on MySpace, and I was helping people like this Mike the Situation from the Jersey Shore with digital and building his website and all that kind of stuff. I taught myself graphic design and video editing, all that stuff. I went to San Diego State, and I think it was my junior year, I dropped out to start my own company. And my dad basically said, great, congratulations on your company, but you're cut off. You have to figure out how to pay for your company on your own. And, I basically did that bootstrapped hustle of like understanding the industry, being in it. I could never become like a YouTuber because, at that time it was really difficult to monetize anything on YouTube. And frankly, I had to get a job and pay my bills, or, I was going to be homeless. So, but I learned all these things. And I think that it's important to understand that, it wasn't just a TikTok agent. I think people kind of dismiss, really my journey. And that was, working for digital agencies for years, not only working for a digital agency, but at the same time working for, being a sort of like a client salesperson at nightclubs and nightlife venues on the weekends. And then, on my free time working on an app. So I was always like, I always had like 3 jobs. I was always just trying to make it. And I think, you can't go to college necessarily, or maybe you can now, but it's not like you can get a PhD in social media. So the people that were like really the early adopters, people like Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, maybe some of you guys follow him, and a couple others were sort of quote unquote experts, but there's not a ton of people that really have been in this from like day one. And I think Taylor Lorenz talks about she started on Tumblr like in 2009. Whatever, my point is, if you look at our careers like sort of parallel, I know that I had started way early on, a lot of times in points where it wasn't lucrative, right? Like I was the person that would work for free for so-and-so for a year just to like, get more knowledge about media, social media, build relationships, and do all those things. And so sort of fast forward to when TikTok started to blow up, I actually bought influences.com in 2013. I was building an app, and I realized that there was a lot going on like Vine stars in LA. So I moved from San Diego to LA and basically started working with, all these, I call them kids, but they weren't kids. They were probably like definitely over 18 to 22-year-old content creators that wanted to connect with brands. And I had all this experience from when I worked at a digital agency. I understood how to sell to brands. I understood search engine optimization, coding, social media, all these things. And so I was kind of like a bridge between advertising executives that were trying to understand how to work with influencers, and sort of like young and cool enough, because I worked at nightclubs at one point in my life, to get along with, the Vine stars of that day, which might have been like Logan Paul and, King Batch and all these guys. And the reason I think too, this whole thing is difficult to explain to probably people like your audience or any mainstream audience, is that they don't know the players, right? They don't know the characters. It's not like, this has to do with Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt and their agents. It's like they don't know who a lot of these people are. So the context is sometimes, it's difficult for people to follow. But for young people, Gen Z, they know who all these people are. These are the people that they consider famous and they want to emulate. So I pretty much got in at the right place at the right time and built these relationships. And then when TikTok came about, this was like 2019, before the pandemic. And basically, you have to look at TikTok as this platform that nobody really took seriously, right? It was kind of like I found all these ponies in a field. They were TikTokers. And I'm like, gosh, there's some opportunity here to work with these sort of new faces. And so I signed several of them to management contracts, or, some type of consulting contracts agreements that would allow me to basically develop them and, pitch them to brands. And at this point, it was still really difficult. I mean, I was trying to educate brands on how TikTok worked, educate influencers on how to work with brands. And finally, we hit this point where, wow, the world woke up to TikTok and every brand wanted to work with TikTokers. And my little ponies in a field grew unicorn horns and wings. And then everybody wanted a unicorn. And I think, that was where I didn't really realize how cutthroat the Hollywood and entertainment space would be. But, I was doing everything above board. I had advisors that were big time in entertainment, people that a lot of people would respect. I had attorneys. A lot of people believed in me and what I was doing. And it was sort of like that point in your life where everybody dreams, is like, especially as an entrepreneur, where I don't know if you guys seen that like meme where it's like an entrepreneur and they're like digging for gold and like they're about to quit right before they strike gold. It was like that moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, I like finally did it. I struck it after all these years.
Hold on a second. Yeah. Now, we're gonna have to back up just a few years. You said you're born in Mexico City. Your father passed away when you were 2. Are you an only child?
My mom got remarried and I have 2 sisters.
And so how old were you when you came to America?
Like, I think 4.
Okay. And okay. Barnes, you got a question?
You've been interested in some aspects of the space since you were very young. What led to that originally? In other words, was it being exposed to Hollywood culture, TV? I mean, what was it that led to your interest in this from the time you were young?
I always wanted to make commercials. Like my favorite movie when I was younger was What Women Want, when Mel Gibson like could hear everything that women were saying and he was trying to make a Nike commercial. And I loved How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, or they're like frost yourself. I always wanted to make commercials. And, I didn't finish college, but I realized at like a certain point that people were being influenced by the different apps on their phone. At the time it was like MySpace and Facebook and things like that. And so I really love the idea of like making sort of like short form commercials, which is basically what, influencers do today. So yeah, that's what like got me excited about it. And I was always a storyteller. I mean, there's a YouTube video. Well, now it's on YouTube, but before it was just my mom's camcorder where I would, be filming myself. And I would even do like, what's it called? Like stop motion. I would watch that Celebrity Death Match. But I mean, it's pretty crazy for an 8 or 9-year-old to have been doing those things. I mean, I think, when you have the nowadays you put those tools in front of a young person and they can do those things. I was really lucky that my dad sort of gave me his hand-me-down computer, and my mom would give me, I guess she let me use her camcorder and record over all my sister's recitals. But yeah, I was also always really creative. And I think, I think it was like in around 2009 when I met Gary Vaynerchuk, who was not famous at all. And nobody understood what I was doing, including my parents. They just were like, okay, or he's a little strange. I was on AOL chats always. And, but it was when I met Gary V, and he was like, I believe in you. You're going to be something. I don't know what you're going to do in this industry. And that was like when it was like he bestowed that confidence in me, that it was like, well, if Gary V believes in me, then that means I'm going to be able to do something.
This is after Gary V had transformed his parents' liquor business into the business that it became. Like, this is after Gary V had established himself as a successful entrepreneur or business developer.
Well, mostly a wine person. He had just released his first book, which I think was Crush It. And I kind of basically stalked him down at a book signing. I had tweeted at him. He was not famous. I was using a BlackBerry to film, our interaction. But that was a big day for me because, when there's not that many people that can, just you're young and you're trying to do this thing. And when there's not a lot of people that can, basically give you the confidence to move forward, that was a big thing. And he's still, somebody I consider a mentor and a very good friend.
For anybody who doesn't actually know who Gary Vaynerchuk is, Gary V, founder of VaynerMedia, and now he's doing VaynerMedia, took over his parents, or he got involved in his parents' wine store, liquor store, made 10x'd it into a multi-million-dollar business. But he used to give, back in the day when I first discovered him, he gave some amazingly good advice. One piece of which was, find a mentor that you want to work for and work for free for a year when you're young. That's what you're supposed to do in your 20s, learn a skill, and then go out and exploit it. Was he
and also too, just, even now, like if you watch him talking about NFTs, I think he's made like, I don't know how many tens of millions in NFTs, but you hear about Mr. Beast, which is, I think, the biggest YouTuber in the world, and people like Logan Paul, and they talk about how much they admire him, and everything he touches turns to gold in terms of, get in on this NFT and get in on this. And so, so in my world, he was like a god, you know what I mean? Like in my world of YouTubers and TikTokers and all these people. And also he has an agency which manages, I don't know what are all the brands, but like all these Fortune 500 brands are basically, their social media is being managed by VaynerMedia at the time, right?
I have a random question. Is Logan Paul crazy?
I don't think so. I think.
What was your experience
really
interacting
smart
with Logan Paul? He just strikes me as a little unique.
Well, I would say both of the brothers are incredibly intelligent. They like really work so hard, and that's the thing. A lot of these influencers, they think like they can just get from point A to point B without doing all the work that it takes to get there. And I definitely feel as though Logan and Jake have put in a ton of work, and they have an incredibly good work ethic. They know, Jake Paul is the younger one, the boxer. Jake Paul, he knows that he's sort of the villain, right? And so he plays into that and creates moments in mainstream media, because back then you have to remember, like Vine stars and YouTubers were still not sort of like anybody that anybody cared about or knew about. Many celebrities didn't know who they were. So, I think that they were really pioneers in the industry. I think that they made a lot of mistakes along the way, potentially because, who were the people that were helping them? Hey, Logan, don't post this video of somebody in a suicide forest. that's, and really that's the job of somebody like myself. At the same time, you can't control human beings. People have free will to do what they want. So you're basically like a mentor to these people and a guide, and hopefully they listen to you. But there's so much behind the scenes that happens that people don't understand. And I think that, as we talk about Taylor Lorenz in the future, I think she used that to her advantage because a lot of people don't understand how this industry works.
Right. Now, so influencers are like continuous commercials then?
Yeah, well, so you have to think about like celebrities, right? So certain people used to look at Michael Jordan and be like, I want to be like Michael Jordan. Well, now somebody can look at somebody like Logan Paul or Charlie D'Amelio or these people and say, hey, that person's just like me. That person went to high school and that person made TikTok videos. And now this person's super famous. And so they can picture themselves in those influencers' shoes more than they can, Michael Jordan, because if you want to be Michael Jordan, then you got to know how to play basketball, right? Really well. And I think that, it's kind of like an ongoing reality show. I mean, some of the most valuable social media pages or Instagrammers that get paid a lot of money are people that came off of The Bachelor or Real Housewives or whatever, because, people can associate them to just like everyday people, or maybe like even the Kardashians, like maybe a long time ago. But I feel like, those people, when they promote a product, it's like QVC on steroids, right? Because it's like, who follows people from The Bachelor? Probably affluent women over the age of 25 in the US and Canada, which is essentially what you want, So there's a lot of marketing, storytelling, and sort of, building a personal brand, which is really like kind of what Gary was all about from the beginning, is not just, hey, this is my company, like, hey, this is who I am. Now you see it all over the place. You see Dave Portnoy, and you know what I'm saying? So it's like the face of a company and the brand.
How much do you look at data for what you're doing? I mean, you've taken a lot of people and helped bridge them from, small nobodies to somebody substantial. How much, when you're looking at that, are you studying marketing data? Like in the political advertising business, we'd study great, demographics. If we advertise on this show, we reach, so there's a reason why political ads are all on Jeopardy. You want the over 60 voter, et cetera. How much do you look at that, or how much of it is instinctual from just absorbing a lot of information on a daily basis?
Well, yeah, you have to look at data. And I think that the biggest thing to understand about why my expertise was so valuable, I believe, during the early stages of TikTok, is because you have platforms that can essentially guess or give a pretty good estimation if like the platform allows for other platforms to integrate with it. Like, for example, I can, use a platform and see, your Instagram followers, how many are male or female, where they live, where, you can pull all this data. It's not always 100% correct unless the influencer like allowed access for Instagram and this platform to pull their data. But with TikTok, you didn't have that, right? And I think same with Snapchat, you don't know that. So the only way to really know was like, okay, I was managing the influencers. They would send me screenshots of their analytics. And so then I would see, wow, this girl has all female, mostly female followers in the US and Canada over the age of 18. This is a really hot profile. And then I would know like enough to go to a Fortune 500 brand and be like, hey, this is really low hanging fruit. You're paying the Kardashians $1 million for a post. Well, you could be paying this like person that nobody knows on TikTok right now, a fraction of that. And I was pushing these people who frankly nobody really even knew about, like people like Charlie D'Amelio. And, and it's very difficult to find these sort of like very brand friendly, all American influencers, because you also have brands that are cognizant of the fact that, there's people like Logan Paul who started out potentially like very brand friendly, doing stuff for Dunkin' Donuts and things like that. And then, had some hiccups in his career where now all of a sudden those brands are like, well, we have to be even more, there's like a brand safety concern. And so I think having someone that had a lot of experience and a relationship with the brand executives, it's very different than traditional Hollywood where, you're casting a movie and you're saying, hey, everybody come and, or hey, agents are going to pick their people and have them be cast in the movie. With digital marketing, it's like, a digital person in an office. It's like, hey, who should we use to promote so-and-so thing? And then, you want to have somebody like probably myself who's like, hey, this is why the ROI of working with this influencer is best. And I think that, one of the things that I always try to do is I never pushed anybody that I was representing to such a high rate that I knew that the brand, it wouldn't back out for the brand, because then I knew they would never call me again. And I knew the influencer would have a bad reputation in Hollywood, or sorry, not in Hollywood, in the advertising industry. Whereas I think a lot of like traditional talent agents, like they just don't care, right? They just want the brand to spend as much as possible. They don't care if the brand doesn't sell one thingamabob or not. They just want, and I think that was, I had just different ways of thinking because I came from a marketer standpoint. But because I was working like that with them, then the brands were like, well, hey, we want to spend 200 grand on TikTok. Do you want to just take the budget and you figure out what we do with it? And so then it was great, right? Because all of a sudden now everything was funneling through me. Well, obviously the agencies didn't find that so great.
So I'm going to bring this chat up just because I think people in the chat who didn't know who you were before this might be confused as to where we're going with this. This is only incidentally related to what it means to be an agent for talent on the TikToks, because this is leading into the defamation lawsuit. We're laying the brickwork, people. Not following the whole concept I fear. People going gaga over celebrities is one thing, but actively encouraging that seems to be another. Help, Pasha Moyer. I don't know that we can help you with this tonight.
Well, yeah, that leads to a question. What are your thoughts about, like, some of the criticism has been that influencer culture is a bad influence on culture itself? What's your thoughts about that?
I mean, I definitely feel like the influencers that I worked with needed people who would guide them, that would help them understand that not everything is about fame and money. And like you have to realize that the people that are promoting sort of like these, I don't know, I just think that there's not that many people like Gary Vee who was like, hey, be kind and have empathy with everyone. And, that's how I believed in all that stuff, because, that's who I am as a person, but also because my mentor said all those things. I couldn't even get some of the influencers to read a passage in a book where I was like, hey, why don't you go read Outliers or go read The Tipping Point, so you understand like these things that they didn't want to. They're like, we know everything. And then there was people encouraging them, so it's, yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother discussion. I definitely think that, but it's not going anywhere. It's not going to go away. We're where we are now. So we have to just understand that. And I think for anybody that doesn't understand what I was talking about earlier, it's like these influencers on TikTok were getting, 20, 40, 50 million views a video. I believe like a Super Bowl commercial is like 30 million views or something like that, right? So you're talking about 15-second pieces of content that people are consuming like, at an alarming rate. And then bring in the pandemic, right? When everybody's in lockdown when it happens, and there's no productions happening in Hollywood. So what does that mean? How do advertisers advertise? Well, the only way is to use social media influencers if you want to market your products. And so part of it was that I had a lot of experience. And another part was that everything kind of came together to put me in a position where I was really valuable to brands and to the influencers, because the influencers knew that I had the connections to the brands, and they knew that I had developed other influencers in the past. And just like, with LawTube, I see a lot of people, a lot of YouTubers who are legal analysts and all this stuff. You guys come together on each other's streams so that you can expose other lawyers to the audiences, right? So that's how you grow. That's how you grow your accounts. And so one of the things that I help the influencers do is I help them connect with each other. Oh, I want to make a video with Logan Paul, or I want to make a video with Bella Thorne, because that's going to elevate me to a whole new audience. And then Bella Thorne's like, well, I want the TikTok audience to find me. I helped Bella Thorne get 1 million TikTok followers, and I believe it was like a month or two, I believe it was a month. But and this is stuff that I didn't get paid to do. I did it so I could help them, and then hopefully she would let me bring brand deals to her. So there was just a lot of things I had to do to put myself in the position where I was at that point, which was basically the height of my career.
And I'll lay some more groundwork, foundation. You bought the domain Influences in 2013 for $4,000. If I may ask, what's it evaluated at today?
I don't know, probably like 50,000 or more even. I mean, it's all about what you do with that real estate. But at the time, nobody even, influencer wasn't really a term back then, I don't think. So I definitely, without hopefully sounding arrogant, I definitely feel I was ahead of my time. And
Well,
yeah.
another example of you being ahead of your time. This is before like Instagram, or whatever, where you had the concept of people posting videos and rating nightclubs so that people could share videos and share images and know which nightclubs they wanted to go to. I'll say ahead of the time. It leads you, or it doesn't cause you to position to be in a place where, but rather you look at TikTok influencers and you say, this might be the wave of the future, whether or not it's COVID lockdowns or whether or not it would have happened anyhow. I think it would have happened anyhow. It goes from YouTube, it goes from Vines to TikTok.
Yeah. And by the way, too, just so people understand, I had worked with celebrities, like mainstream celebrities, like people like French Montana were consulting with me. I worked with Canelo Alvarez, the boxer, doing deals for him. So I really had a broad understanding of digital world, social media world, entertainment, and brands, right? I worked with brands for many years in digital marketing, sales, search engine optimization, all this stuff. So, and it was, I think a lot of people that, are super tech nerdy and like you fall into one bucket, right? You're either like, friends with people that are out at nightclubs, or you're, coding at home. Like and for whatever reason, I happen to have a little bit of all of this stuff, which like really put me in a good position for what happened when TikTok exploded.
So you become an agent representative, whatever you want to call it, of TikTokers. And you get, for anybody who doesn't know, you may not like the platform, people. I personally don't like TikTok. And I don't like the way it seems to be very highly addictive for young people, but set aside my qualms with it. You start representing some of the biggest names. Charli D'Amelio, for anybody, like, they get millions of views on these TikToks posts, which are short videos. Now YouTube tried to copy them, Instagram to some extent. You start representing these individuals, and you build up your business into at its peak. I mean, I don't like asking numbers, but you build it up into an immensely successful business. How does the shit hit the fan with the hit pieces that lead to the defamation claims that lead to the lawsuit? Like what happens to bring you under the microscope of the attack of the MSM?
Yeah, and related to that, like the criticism of a lot of this is the commercialization or corporatization of individual experiences. But basically but the flip side of that is what you were part of was the democratization of the advertising space. And that is going to run afoul of the gatekeeper's control of it through the agency structure. How did that play into what Viva's talking about?
So, well, it kind of happened in two phases. So essentially, I was working with these couple, like a handful of these people that like exploded, the big unicorns, right? And at the time, some big talent agencies started reaching out to my clients. And you have to understand that these influencers, it was very clear who was working with them, because on all their social medias, it had Charlie@influences.com, so-and-so at influences.com, Brittany at influences.com. And every single email that came to me, right? Because and my company. So these people were reaching out to them, in other whatever ways they could. And what was really interesting is that in the very beginning, around December of 2019, I believe it was, Taylor Lorenz, who I had known from like 2 years past. She was working at The Atlantic. So she had my phone number. We were friends. I believe we were friends on social media. We had exchanged it. She could have gotten in touch with me very easily. She reached out while I was working with these people, and they had my email on their page. She reached out to Charlie's mom, I believe, on an Instagram DM and said, "Hi, I'm a reporter at the New York Times. Like, I would love to do a story about the Hype House and these influencers that were basically living in like collectives." So if you think about like tech incubators, they were kind of living in these like content houses where they could make content together. But it was very like, it wasn't like formalized or anything at this point. It was just friends getting together, making videos. But most of the people in this Hype House were repped by me, the most valuable sort of accounts. And so we're sort of educating the parents at this time too. You have to understand, like, this is like holy crap, my kid is famous, like can't even go to school, and they're trying to process all these things. And so, you know, that was part of my job. And we were working together with another lady named Barbara. And essentially Taylor started, I don't know how, but essentially they left me out of the conversation with the New York Times. And then the New York Times did an article called the Hype House Gold Rush. And really that's what it was, is the TikTok gold rush. Everybody, these kids were so valuable. Everything they were doing was valuable. And they exploded after Taylor did this article about them. I thought it was a little strange that Taylor didn't mention me in the article. And it was
Ariadna, I think the chat's lost on what the TikTok house is, or the what was
Hype
the word?
House.
Say it
I
again.
think it was called the Hype House.
So
The
Hype
Hype
House is like, if you picture like Saturday Night Live, it's like this group of people that make videos, that make content together for SNL, and they come in and out, but there's like the staple people. So it's kind of like that, but on TikTok, where you have like, they're all individual talent, but they kind of get together for this, show. They tag the Hype House. It's whatever. The point is, she did this article.
They live in the Hype House?
Some of them do. Some of them just go and visit.
Sounds like hell on earth to an adult, but okay. So it's like there's some other it's like Big Brother sort of, where people live in this house, young people. They do their content, whatever their specific themes are. And how are they making money to live in this Hype House?
Well, they are getting brand deals, typically at this point. But it was so early on that this is the point where I'm in the background, like calling, Fortune 500 brand, being like, you got to work with Charlie. And it was like, a lot of people didn't know who they were yet. And anyway, Taylor does this article about them. I don't really know anything about Taylor except for that she's a technology reporter. I don't know at the time that she's represented by UTA, which is a behemoth talent agency that represents huge people. You can look them up. There's like 3 big talent agencies, and they're one of them.
Taylor has her own agency.
She's represented by UTA, which is United Talent Agency.
Really?
So Taylor's
I understand that's very unusual for journalists. Taylor likes to run around and pretend she's a journalist.
Is
that a new phenomenon?
I don't know if it's unusual, but if you go look at
it's unusual
UTA's,
by my experience, but
by a common person, right?
I'm not
Most
as old
people,
as Taylor Lorenz, but almost.
No, I feel like it's so fair to say that, though, because like you have to understand that before Taylor did the hit piece, after she did the hit piece, I was like, in my mind, like at this time, I didn't know she was working with UTA, which at the time weren't even necessarily my competitors. Like, people were advising me, UTA is huge. Instead of competing with them, why don't you kind of work with them? And, and so I said, okay, if they bring a deal to this person, I'll commission them out. But what the agencies wanted was not that. They wanted the incoming emails. So I got Charlie D'Amelio. She's got Charlie at Influences on her page, and then Dunkin' Donuts emails. And so guess what? Well, that's my client. I'm going to respond back to Dunkin', and I'm going to take my percentage. Well, that's not what these agencies wanted. The UTA wanted me to send them all the emails. And I'm like, well, I don't understand. You guys didn't do anything. Like, you guys go out. They wanted to be order takers. And I just felt like I whatever they can do, I can do. I can negotiate these deals. I'm just as smart. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like what they were doing.
And you might not have the same conflicts of interest that every agency in Hollywood has.
So,
right.
But now, just to clarify this now for the chat and for the viewers, Taylor Lorenz, who's a journalist, is being represented simultaneously by an agent, UTA.
Yeah.
What is? I mean, and if I'm just asking myself questions out loud. What does she do? Does she do brand deals in addition to being a journalist? And then, if she's a journalist, how does she report on things that she's involved in?
She has a book deal with Simon & Schuster, which UTA negotiated for her. And I think, listen, I didn't know anything about this. Like, I didn't know that reporters were repped by agencies. And by the way, Taylor wrote an article about UTA about UTA, and I think she mentioned CAA, but it was called "These Agents Are Signing All the Influencers." While she was at New York Times, it was basically like a hagiography about UTA, and didn't disclose that they represented her. So, I mean, so anyway, there was no way I would have known that Taylor was rep by UTA until like in the very, after she did a hit piece about me, I started like, I thought I was going crazy. I'm like, am I like some conspiracy theorist? I'm like putting like the red, yarn together. I couldn't figure it out. But then once I realized she had an agent at UTA, I'm like, okay, that's, so what happened is she writes this story about the Hype House, and then almost immediately, these kids won't talk to me. The people I was representing, they went away. The big ones, these big influencers. And so I really took it on the chin because I thought it was like, I thought it was something I did, or maybe whatever I did. I couldn't really, sorry, my AirPod came out. I couldn't figure out what had happened. And anyway,
I'm bringing this up real time. I don't know if I'll get to the article because it seems to be behind a paywall. These top Hollywood agents are signing all the influencers April 6, 2020 by Taylor Lorenz. And let's just see how much we can read before. I'm not even paying. I wouldn't pay 50 cents a year. Okay. So
I lose
your story
these
checks
big
out.
clients. I lose these big clients. And then I'm like, well, it's okay. Like I should keep going. So I kind of like whatever. And then UTA signs these people, Charlie D'Amelio and blah. So then I keep going and I go to this big conference in Orlando. I forget what it's called, Playlist Live and I basically ended up signing all these other people, because you have to think about it too. At that point, a lot of TikTokers didn't have representation. Basically I have a great case study right behind me, because I'm like, well, I did represent these people. And so those influencers knew who those people were. And they were like, well, we want to work with you. I was like getting inbound, like all these people that wanted to work with me. So I end up, working with smaller people, but they were still able to make money with ads. And I go to this conference and basically I was a popular person on the block, right? I helped them get brand deals so that they could get houses at this conference and travel. And I literally have video of them chanting, Ari, like, just so thrilled I was working with them. This is like in February. I think February, March. So anyway, how is it that like a couple months later, Taylor starts digging into, and by the way, I saw Taylor at the conference, and it was so weird because I just saw her as someone that helped Charlie and all them like explode, right? So I almost like, I was a little like afraid. I knew she wasn't anybody's friend. Like she was my friend, but she was a journalist. But at the same time, I'm like, wow, like if I can get these new kids an article by Taylor Lorenz, like they're going to become millionaires too, just like the unicorns, right? And when I saw her at the conference, she didn't really want to have much to do with me. Like she took some pictures with my clients there, but like she didn't want to sit down at lunch with me. Like I was just being overly nice. I had really no idea that she was an adversary or was going to be. But then we get back from the conference, and that's when I believe that she started digging in. And when I say digging in, I think she really, like, in my opinion, like inserts herself into situations where potentially somebody doesn't have a problem. And then she's like, well, did you hear about the allegations about like this and this? And, she's talking to sometimes 16-year-olds or 18-year-olds or even parents who are like, well, the New York Times is saying this about Ari. Like, we just got into this. Like, why are we're not going to ruin our kids' chance. Like when we could be working with UTA and Taylor Lorenz. Like, do you get what I'm saying? So she's kind of like planting a seed, and people don't know any better than to listen, or at least, now all of a sudden be very extra cautious of everything that's going on.
So there are two articles that Taylor Lorenz writes with respect to you and influences?
No. So she left me out of the Hype House article, which explodes the unicorns. And then she does another article just about really like the TikTok houses as a whole. And she sort of mentions a couple of the houses that I'm working on. And I think it's important to for people to understand this, because, big part of this is going to be, I think the New York Times in their legal proceedings is trying to say that I'm a public figure or limited purpose public figure because Taylor mentioned me in an article. And I think it's like, if you start a bakery and, a newspaper comes and says like, do you want to talk about your blueberry muffins? Like, of course, as an entrepreneur, you're going to be like a normal person that's not now so, understanding of journalism today is going to be like, yeah, like, please talk about my bakery and my blueberry muffins. That's all I did, right? Is I just said, yeah, these are the concepts of the TikTok houses. And to understand sort of like what the concept was, is I saw them as like media companies. So there was like a Girls in the Valley house with, girls in it that you could consider like 17 magazine, or, the Drip Crib, which was like GQ and Sports Illustrated, and the Kids Next Door, which was like Rolling Stone and Nickelodeon or something like, so if all the influencers are posting at the same time, it's a media buy that, a lot of people are going to see. And so those were the sort of the concepts of the houses. And I was investing my own personal money to try to, and putting my name on the lease to help these influencers sort of follow their dreams. And
when did you first get wind that she was writing the hit piece?
Well, so I'm trying to think. I think there was just like a couple rumors. I don't remember like who specifically told me. There was sort of like, the influencers that were already sort of on Taylor's like train. And then there was a couple that like, I think felt bad, and they were like, hey, something's going to happen. But like these big influencers were already with Taylor, and they didn't want to, these other ones didn't want to get, it's like high school, right? These kids are just mean to each other. They bully each other. It's like, well, if you don't go along with what we're doing, then, whatever. And I think it was a really manipulative situation, but it was crazy because before, I think it was like a week or 2 weeks before the article went out, or before she reached out to us for with all these allegations, she basically two of the influencers, they came to me and they were like, well, we don't want to pay you for any of the stuff you've done, and we know that you just signed a lease for a house for us for 20 grand a month, but we're kind of over it, and we want to do our own thing now. Even though we signed production contracts with you and you gave us an advance and got us this house, we don't really want to do this anymore. And if you don't let us out of our contract, something bad's going to happen. Like, it's up to you. So what was the bad thing that was going to happen? They were talking to Taylor Lorenz.
I'm telling people in the chat, like, this is law. This is a concrete application of the law where you hear the story, you hear the facts. They're not some people are going to listen to this, Ariadna, and they're going to say, like, they're going to have let's say moral issues with the idea of leasing out a house so a bunch of kids can go be TikTok influencers and do what they do in a house. And like, it's a bizarre world. It's not my world, but you lease out this house so that these TikTok influencers can live there, so that you can you represent them. And I got asked that, like, the
there was all sorts of stipulations too. Like, they were supposed to pay for, I wasn't like some big investor. Like, I was bootstrapped. So it was like, it was basically like, I was putting in money from that I had savings to put into it. They were each supposed to pay X amount per month. And, it was like we were building a business together. And it wasn't like, I put them in a house and was like slave labor, like, go make content. Like, to be quite honest with you, they were supposed to like do their own content every day. Like, I think 10% of it got done. Like, they just didn't do it. And it was kind of like running a sorority house with, people that just, I think that they just didn't appreciate it. And they didn't appreciate, like, what I was putting on the line, liability and all that stuff. But we were doing everything above board. Of course, it wasn't The Bachelor. We didn't have 100 producers there and all this stuff, but it was like a makeshift sort of bachelor house or what, you know what I'm saying? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so you're doing this with young people who have shown the judgment of, I forget if it's Jake or Logan Paul, whoever went to the forest. Now, okay. So Robert had asked, like, when did you get the idea? When did you get wind of the fact that Lorenz was writing this hit piece? When and how long does it take to write such a hit piece? I mean, she interviewed a lot of people. She got she
said that she interviewed all these business partners of mine and all these people, but I don't have any business partners. Like, it's very like, she definitely didn't include everyone she talked to in the piece. So I don't know, I don't know who she talked to, if those people were former, people I worked with that maybe I was doing better than at this point. Like, I don't know. I didn't know who she talked to. I just know a couple people. Basically, she reaches out, and I had been like sort of friendly with her. And luckily, at this point, there was somebody in my life that was very well aware of how the media works and PR and stuff. He wasn't hired or anything. He was a friend and was like, my spidey senses are going on. I think something's going on with this. Like, don't just pick up the phone and chat with her, because I'm pretty chatty. Like, I probably, if I wasn't suspecting, I would just sit there and talk on the phone with her, especially because I wanted to promote these things that we were doing. And basically, I told her I didn't want to speak to her, and if she had any questions, that she could go ahead and email us. And she was very annoyed about that, it seemed like. And finally, she sent us a whole thing of questions. And, you know, it's kind of like what happened to, I think, Libs of TikTok, was what they reached out to somebody on Ron DeSantis's team and said, like, you have an hour to respond, or whatever it was. So they said, you know, we have all these allegations and you have, you know, 24 hours to respond. And at that point, one of my attorneys that's big in entertainment at the time, he was like, just say no comment, like, you know, whatever. And I'm like, and in my mind, I'm like, no, I'm like, I didn't do anything wrong. I have the truth on my side. Give him everything. I'll give him all the receipts, give him. And then my lawyer's like, well, we can't give him everything, because if you give him everything, then you could be held liable because, you know, for example, she said that I didn't pay people. So basically saying like I stole money from influencers. And I'm like, no, show them when I paid them. I paid them when the money came in. And it's like, well, Ari, if we show them that, then you're going to expose this Fortune 500 company, which you're under NDA with, and saying that they paid late and now they're going to be in trouble. So you can't actually show her that unless it's on background. So I'm like, okay, hey, Taylor, we'll send you all this stuff on background. You can't publish it. And also it's my IP. Like I had, you know, contracts that I had spent a lot of time tweaking and making perfect to what we were doing. So I'm going to show her also my intellectual property to print all over the New York Times. Like, there was a lot of reasons, not sure, but we said, we'll show you just so I can exonerate myself. She was the judge, jury, and executioner apparently. And but she said, no, I won't take that, because we won't take anything on background. And so then, well, we said, well, why not? And she's, well, that's not New York Times's policy. But so she set up a game, but she set it up unfairly, because the other people that were making these allegations, she did take stuff on background from them.
Well, yeah, of
So
course.
you see, I'm trying to explain how they set up the game here. And the reason why it's important, and I hope people listen, is because I don't have a political affiliation. What is her excuse going to be for what she did to me, except for potentially, you know, the way I see it, maybe gaining favor with people that had something to gain with my demise, and that making her more famous, right? Taylor gets her book deal, and then these agencies are very well connected with the media, with Variety and with Hollywood Reporter and all these people. And they have access to other stars. So all that's going to do is make their relationship better, and all of them are going to prosper. It's just important for people to understand.
I'm going to bring this up. Robert, this is for you. Robert, does it make you feel old to know that you struck out on your owns in the 1900s? I don't know. I thought this is the 1990s. I thought that was a joke about how old Barnes is. Because, Ariadna, the internet says you're 37. I don't deny the internet. You're still speaking in one generation younger than me. I know what's going on with TikTok, but what you're talking about, I can understand it. But my goodness, it's a different culture.
Well, and that's why it's so difficult for people to like be like enraged or like, I can't believe that Taylor did this to Ari, because they don't even understand it.
We're gonna dumb it down, not dumb it down, but rather going to oversimplify it a lot. First of all, what is meant by on background? Because you said she asked for some background stuff. What did you mean by on background?
So on the record means that anything you say, they can print as you said it. And if I show them a receipt or an invoice or a contract, they can print it verbatim. If you say, I'll give this to you on background, it basically means you can't print it. You can use the information as, I guess, like substantive. Is that, I mean, I don't know, Robert, you're
Yep.
shaking your head like you know better than I do.
Oh, sure. I mean, well, first of all, the New York Times is
Oh, I
infamous
think you're on
on
mute.
background reporting.
Oh,
I mean,
sorry.
the
No,
New
never
York
mind, I can
Times,
hear.
the New York Times spread weapons of mass destruction based on background reporting. Many of the fake news that we're getting to, I mean, all the fake news related to Russiagate for the most part was on background reporting by the New York Times. So to hear Taylor Lorenz lie about on background reporting is extraordinary. The broader story, there's a contemporary context and there's a broader context. The contemporary context, for those that don't know, is Taylor Lorenz is the reporter who just doxed libs of TikTok. That's who Taylor Lorenz is. She now works at the Washington Post. Maybe the UTA helped her get a bonus. In terms of moving from the Times to the Post. And the week before, she had gone on TV crying about how it was terrible that people had ever doxed her. And then the next week, she doxes libs of TikTok. Just amazing fraudster. The broader context is the efforts to democratize the advertising space and the efforts of the gatekeepers to monopolize that space. That's part of the story. Another part of the story is the deep conflict within all of the Hollywood agency industries. It's regular, it's routine, how it's not led to more
And the
lawsuits.
media. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm going to get to that. That's the
How
third
they work
part.
together. Yeah.
The second part is that these agencies are conflicted all the time. It happened to Wesley Snipes. They redid Blade 3 in a certain way to relegate Wesley Snipes for the future and elevate Ryan Reynolds for the future. It didn't work out because Reynolds wasn't really good in Blade. But here the problem, his agents were also representing Ryan Reynolds and representing other people. The agency business should not be a consolidated business. It should be a bunch of small boutique practices because the conflicts are so all over the place that it makes no sense that the agency business has been consolidated. But the way they've done it is through these conflicts of interest favoring institutional insiders managed to evade major liability and accountability. I mean, Johnny Depp was the recipient of very bad advice. But the third aspect is the real role, especially of the media in general, but of the tech media space in particular, has been to make sure that big tech and the tech space is dominated by the same gatekeepers for an institutional narrative. Like what enrages Taylor Lorenz about libs of TikTok is its success. So the goal was how to prevent the replication of that success. Do a hit piece. And dox libs of TikTok. Not so much to get at libs of TikTok, but to prevent and deter and discourage anyone else from trying to replicate. That's where the hit piece on you was in part a hit piece on you individually, but also it's discouraging in this new democratization of advertising space, ordinary everyday people from having more control and influence in that space. They want these people funneled in to controlled gatekeepers at a corporatized, institutionalized level and to protect and promote them. And that's what, the New York Times, that's like tech reporter. She's not a reporter. She's not a journalist. She's a smear merchant and propagandist.
And what it felt like, I used to be a figure skater, and it I don't have any proof that they were conspiracy, but it felt like the whole Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan thing, right? Like right when she's about to compete at the height of her career, they take her out so she doesn't even get a chance. And
it's a message to anyone else who wants to replicate that. That's what all of these hit pieces have in common. That's who Taylor Lorenz is. It's the reason why this story in this case play a role. Now, so the piece comes out. What's your reaction to it?
Hold on, before we even get there, just we don't need to get into the allegedly defamatory allegations. Suffice to say, some of them were you didn't pay your you didn't remit the funds to your clients as needed. Others were that you leaked nude photos of some of them. Were you responsible for that? Mistreatment, whatever you can imagine as being the slanderous. If you want to elaborate on some of the allegedly defamatory allegations.
So sort of, I think the anchor of her reporting was a labor commission dispute filed by one of the influencers against me. And it seemed as though like a few weeks after that was filed, that was sort of the catalyst to her story, why she could, write all these things. But you have to remember that we hadn't gone to court to prove that I'd done anything wrong, and I never got, that case. I didn't have to. It got settled out of court. There was no money exchanged. Anyway, but the interesting part is that influencer was the one that I was trying to work symbiotically with UTA, and the one that wanted me to hand over all the emails, but I wouldn't do it. And so then all of a sudden she files this labor dispute saying that I don't have a talent agency license. That's a whole nother thing in the weeds I won't get into, but basically you don't have to have a talent agency license to represent influencers on TikTok. And if so, there's never been a precedent set. And the Talent Agencies Act was, I think, written so that, people that were going to the casting couch and getting taken advantage of, that wouldn't happen. You had to be, the agents had to get a background check and all that stuff. And anyway, by the time Taylor wrote the article, the negative article, I did have a talent agency license just to protect myself, just so I would have it. But the point is, somebody filed a frivolous lawsuit. They're also represented by UTA. And then several people in the piece, including one of the girls, is also represented by UTA. And after the hit piece, she shows up on Good Morning America and all these positive pieces with Taylor Lorenz about, the COVID vaccines and the government talking to TikTokers. I mean, this influencer, in my eyes, was rewarded for going along with Taylor's narrative, and then got all these things to make them more famous. So, it's like people like Taylor have the ability to hand out little blue check marks, because the way it works with Instagram, how do you get verified? You have to have mainstream press. And, so the influencers, and by the way, I told them, hey, how did Charli D'Amelio blow up? Well, Taylor Lorenz did a story about them. So now all of a sudden Taylor Lorenz is calling them, and you get what I'm saying? So I don't know if it's a quid pro quo type of thing or what, but it just felt like, so that's sort of what's going on. But I think that, in the article, the main things that really hurt me in terms of anybody that brands that wanted to work with me or influencers, the reason I lost pretty much all my clients was because she wrote in there essentially that I take advantage of kids. Now, most of the people I was working with were all over 18. And they all, like, for example, I think she wrote that I had cameras in the house without consent, which wasn't true. She wrote it as a quote. So she did all these things kind of like as quotes. She did a whole nother huge section of the article where she quotes this girl, Tiana Singer. Well, Tiana Singer wasn't even my client. That's like the same thing as like, a disgruntled worker from wherever is getting interviewed and put in this piece, but that person never ever worked for that company. How can you do that? And so what happened afterwards was I was furious, because I'm like, how is this legal? How is this allowed? And I went to my, and the nude images thing, by the way, one of the influencers in the house, another manager texted me and said, hey, you might want to be aware there's all these nude images of one of the guys in your houses who was like a leader. So I text the guy and I go, why are your nudes all over the internet? And he texts me back and says, well, there was an iCloud hack and all my nudes are all over the internet. But then in the article, it says I leaked his nudes. And I think my lawyer wrote one of the things like saying that's like the equivalent of somebody sending something to HR and then you use the word leaked. Like, I think leaked in the dictionary is literally like making a private thing public. And so that word in and of itself, I see it as defamatory, because it's like any common person reading that is like, this chick didn't pay them. She leaked their nudes. She was basically a pervert, like filming them without permission. Like, it makes me look like the Wicked Witch of the West, which was devastating, because I was quite literally the opposite of that. I was like putting in all my money to like help them. And it wasn't like I was making millions of dollars. You have to remember, the people that were making millions, the unicorns are gone already. So now I have these, smaller accounts that I'm trying to build up, and it was not as lucrative as Charli D'Amelio and those people. And so it was going to be, we were at that time where, again, the pandemic happens and now all these people want the TikTokers in their houses. But it was, what I found out was that there's like not a lot you can do, right? I remember sitting with an attorney and he's like, well, there's not much we can do, honey. Like, this sucks that this happened to you, but like, what are you going to do? Sue the New York Times? Like, you don't have any money. And I'm like, okay, but like, well, what do we do? And they're like, well, you could sue the influencers, but then you'll probably never work in Hollywood. And, they're already saying that you're an evil witch. So if you go and sue them, and what money do they have for you to get, even if you won at this point? There was just all these sort of what ifs. And it basically drew me down this like path of understanding, what has happened in the past. I mean, even Peter Thiel, who's like one of the most, wealthiest tech investors who invested in Facebook and all this stuff. At one point, he wanted to take out Gawker, and people told him the same thing, like, hey, good luck. That's not going to happen because the media does whatever it wants. And even if they're mean-spirited and they do these things, good luck with that. Peter Thiel was able to take out Gawker by funding Hulk Hogan's lawsuit and everything like that. But this wasn't Gawker going up against me, and I'm not Peter Thiel. This is the New York Times. And little me, it was definitely in my eyes like a David and Goliath situation.
So you sue them. Hold on, I've lost my screen here. I can hear. You sue them for defamation. You sue Taylor Lorenz and the New York Times. What's the status of the lawsuit?
Yeah, so it's right now. We're waiting for the judge to rule on their motion to dismiss. I think it's important for anybody that feels like Taylor Lorenz's journalism is unethical and anybody that supports her is a problem. I believe that one of the only ways to hold these types of people accountable is in court, and we have to see the evidence and the discovery of who were these people talking to, what were they saying, what is Taylor going to say in depositions, and if we don't even get there, then like how can a normal, a non-public figure, how can we ever fight back against these huge corporations and these huge, it would be really disappointing. I definitely have a lot of confidence that it's going to move forward. I mean, but I don't know. I'm not an attorney. Our judge, he's a Puerto Rican immigrant, and I've heard some of the things he's spoken to young people, young lawyers, and I think he looks like a great guy. So I just hope that he gives us a chance. And I think people that are looking at the Taylor Lorenz situation, it's like most people I think that get reached out to by somebody like Taylor, they say no comment. And it's hard. I think what we have on our side is that we answered I believe it was 50 questions, allegations that she gave before she printed the story. So she had to know at least that there was a strong chance that what she was writing was false. And a lot of people don't do that. They don't give up all this 50 questions of information and all this stuff. And I think sometimes when people get smeared, maybe 5% of what they did was true, or, and they don't have the resources to move forward with it. I luckily was paying attention to when Taylor started causing a fight with Mark Andreessen, who's another really big tech billionaire. And I started going into rooms and just like, hey, this is what happened to me. I know nobody probably cares. And then I think people started to realize, well, if she's doing this to somebody like Ari, there's no end to who she can attack and what she could do and whatever her motives are. I think that, so I think I got just information by starting to talk about what happened. And then that's how I met my lawyer. And I gave you only have a year, I think, to file for defamation. And a lot of people were like, Ari, you're talented, just forget about this. And I'm like, no, this was 15 years of my life. I can't go back to my 20s and, find a husband and get married. I'm single at this point because I put all my energy into building a company, and I can never get that time back. And I can never get that time in the future. I mean, in the past, back when TikTok was exploding, you get what I'm saying? It was all the things came together, and I'm not to say I'm never going to be able to do anything again, but what she took away was so devastating that as an entrepreneur, I wasn't going to let that go. And I gave myself 1 year. If you can't do anything, if you can't file the lawsuit, if you can't find anyone to represent you after a year, you got to let it go and you got to move on with your life. But I'm if I don't try, then I'm going to spend the rest of my life wondering what if I did. And I'm so grateful that I did. And for anybody else that something like this happens to, I really encourage you to try to fight back. Because if you have the truth on your side, you just got to try, I think.
What state? Where's the court?
It's in New York Federal Court.
Federal Court, Southern District of New York. Yeah. So I mean, I think the case should survive a motion to dismiss. The Southern District of New York has, shall we say, an interesting history when it comes to the New York Times. But we'll leave that for another day. We'll wait for the judge. Maybe the judge will make the right ruling legally. If he doesn't, then that'll be a subject of future Sunday conversation. So you decide to. How have you tried to move on from this in terms of other than filing the suit, trying to at least establish in the court of public opinion what happened and the dangers of the New York Times power and corrupt, propagandists like Taylor Lorenz. I mean, Taylor Lorenz is the kind of person who pretends she's in her 30s when I think she's almost 50. It's that's who she is. But how are you otherwise transitioning from the hit piece that they did on you?
Well, I'll tell you something that was really interesting. Like, obviously, when she wrote the article, I'm like, well, there's got to be someone else out there that'll like write about this. And what I realized is like everybody that writes about social media and technology wants to either be Taylor Lorenz or they're scared of her. And like another reporter wrote an article, was writing an article about me. And before she published, Taylor Lorenz called her editor and said, you better not let this reporter publish this story about Ari because Ari's an abuser. So she went around all these people. So I couldn't even not only did she take me out, but she makes sure I stay down. And so that I was like, well, I want to tell my side of the story. And it wasn't until I was finally asked to go on Tucker Carlson. And, I never really watched the show. But, I did follow that he didn't like Taylor Lorenz. And so I'm like, okay, well, but I was like, maybe because he's very polarizing, so maybe I could go somewhere else and talk about it. But what I didn't realize is who else, by the way, all these people are either friends with Taylor or they're repped by UTA. Anderson Cooper is repped by UTA, I believe. Don Lemon, the Young Turks, Robin Roberts. They have a thing with Good Morning America, a thing with 2020. I mean, who was going to tell my story? Who was going to write a blog about it? And people are going to hear it. So, I mean, and not to say anything negative about Tucker, but I was like, I'm going to go on. A lot of people in entertainment were like, you shouldn't do that because then all these people are not going to like you. And I'm like, well, my thing isn't political. And by the way, the left-leaning media should be leaning into someone like me. I thought that they support minorities. But in this case, so I go on Tucker Carlson and I felt he was very fair. Let me say what I needed to say. And I felt good about that. And then, basically all the people that always defend Taylor, they're just quiet. Nobody says anything else. Nobody has me on to talk about it. Like nobody says anything else. So that should be like kind of I think like an indicator of how the media works, right? It's like when it doesn't follow the narrative, then they're just going to shut you out, And so I'm glad I went on Tucker. And I think that I got a lot of support, and that really helped me mentally.
Yeah, it's amazing. People are reluctant to go on Tucker because they'll be called, racist or whatever. It's nuts. I got one question that someone asked a while back. I'm curious. I'm gonna tone it down in terms of the direction of accusation. Was Ariadna? I don't care if you were involved in any Fauci juice promotion, but did that? Well, I'll ask. In your experience, did that occur in the TikTok influencer world where TikTokers were in fact being paid by government or intermediary agencies to promote the Fauci juice? That's vaccine.
Yeah, I was basically already wiped out by that time that happened, but there was an influencer, Ellie Zeiler, whose mom mentioned me in the article and said some not so nice things that I believe were untrue. But that influencer was part of that whole article that Taylor wrote about the government or a company paying influencers to promote the vaccine. That same influencer, Ellie Zeiler, was also, I think, part of that phone call about Ukraine. It's an influencer that is injecting themselves in a lot of political stuff.
So yeah, for those people that don't understand it, the broader context of this is not just the sort of gatekeep. One of the reasons for the gatekeeping control, because basically the New York Times for several years waged selective war against different people in the tech space. They did a huge hit piece where they had Dave Rubin and Stefan Molyneux, and they said, if you watch these people, you're going to end up in a rabbit hole of crazy right-wing beliefs and all this stuff. It was a hit piece on YouTube to require YouTube's algorithms to be manipulated in favor of the New York Times and gatekeeper control, and to start its purge, which it started to do not long after that hit piece, not coincidentally. And it's part of it, like we recently saw, the U.S. government is offering large sums of money to TikTok influencers to promote the war in Ukraine. So if you have them within a control structure, they're not democratized. You don't have a bunch of small boutique shops that are managing them, but they're controlled by a couple of big agencies. Then those agencies can say, you're going to need to do this in order to keep our ongoing relationships with. And this is how the managerial class controls and manipulates information broader. So they take somebody that's really likely has no concern whatsoever politically, and they make them be political. But part of the way to do that is to control their business managers, the agents, the people that are in the intermediaries of their monetary support. And that's why it's a broad, and Taylor Lorenz has been part of that as well, has promoted all of it. I mean, that's why she's panicking at Elon Musk buying Twitter. That it's not a coincidence she's one of the main people going berserk about it. She does not want people to understand how this game really works. She's helped cover up and be complicit in the cover up of what Twitter has been up to and what big tech has been up to and its selective censorship and the rest, and has been just a smear merchant and a propagandist for the institutional interest, including defaming and doxing whoever gets in the way, usually picking on more vulnerable targets. With the only reason why she hasn't been sued into oblivion is because she's been careful about which targets she's picked. She doesn't pick Peter Thiel, generally speaking. She picks other people to go after.
I think she had no clue I would ever come up from my.
Well, most people don't. Most people, when I took on the representation of the Covington kids for free, it was because most of them would not have sued otherwise. Normally, it's very expensive to fight, definitely to fight the New York Times. And it's so out of the gate, there's a financial limitation. Then there's the invasiveness of discovery that takes place. And as we're seeing kind of in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case, I mean, all the medical records are out and about. Everything in his private life is fully, in order to vindicate himself, he has to disclose everything in his personal life, everything in his professional life. And so that's a huge deterrent. And then third, you have a judicial system that's biased in favor of the big actors. That they have no problem, having Alex Jones be sued into oblivion for a misrepresentation of what he did and said. But if it's the New York Times, all of a sudden a different legal standard comes in. Even Project Veritas figured that out. They got a good ruling from the state court at the trial court level, goes up to the Court of Appeals. They're like, oh, no more discovery should take place here. This is the New York Times. We need to take a full review of this. Yeah,
I think that's why it's important to pay attention, because like you see the lawsuits, Sarah Palin, Project Veritas, Donald Trump, but I'm not any of those people. I'm not political. So hopefully this moves forward so we can hold these people to account. And I feel like even the New York Times, to be quite honest, like nobody wants to pick a fight with the New York Times because, all journalists want to be on the New York Times bestseller list. They have so much influence. It's like an $8 billion company, all this stuff. And I didn't want to really pick a fight with the New York Times. But I think what's interesting is like after we filed the lawsuit, 3 days later, Taylor posted on Twitter, going on book leave and I won't be back until January or something like that.
She's writing a book.
And I think what I would guess is that the New York Times was probably like, you need to chill out. Like, you just got us into a lawsuit. Like, please stop tweeting, like, and continue. But I think somebody like Taylor, like, that's what she thrives on. And so for whatever reason, maybe my case was taking too long and the New York Times didn't want it. So she went to the Washington Post, where now she could go on NBC and MSNBC and cry about how she's getting bullied and attacked. And
we're going to get there in a second. And I'll tell you this, Ariadna, the problem with litigation is like, as a lawyer, everyone comes to you and they say, tell the story of my case. And I say, like 9 out of 10 times, most people are not going to be interested, not because they're selfish, just because they're busy with their own lives.
Of course.
It's complicated. And even your story, I knew a ton of the details beforehand. It's complicated even having that backdrop. You try to get people, what's the word? Invested in your story. It's very difficult. What makes it a little easier is that Taylor Lorenz has turned herself into a very lovable target of hatred, and if I can put it that way, she's made herself sufficiently loathed within the public community that even if people, I read the chat, people are not in love with what the industry is, not you as an individual.
Oh, I totally get it. Yeah.
And I have my own, my own thoughts. I think Big Brother, X on the Beach, I think all of these shows are tremendously exploitive, but to each their own. That's life. But Taylor Lorenz is a loathsome individual. And just to explain a little, I showed the clip at the beginning, but I'll give another one just in case anyone had any lingering doubts. We see this right now. This shirt. Listen to this.
And I also thought that the fact that she claims to have been inside the barrier at the insurrection last year.
Sorry, context. This is her talking about the Libs of TikTok individual that she just. Robert, we're going to discuss whether or not she doxed her, but she certainly.
I mean, by her own definition. I mean, just a week before, she was on MSNBC saying people disclosing things about her life. And if there's anybody that's a public figure, by golly, Taylor Lorenz is a public figure. The Libs of TikTok was really not a public figure. And you were not really a public figure. Taylor Lorenz is, and there she is. She's crying about how terrible it is that people talk about certain aspects of her life as a public figure. And then she turns around and goes after the Libs of TikTok and says it's okay. She gives different excuses at different times. One time she says, well, it's not really private information. It's not technical doxing. It's just kind of doxing. Well, I went to her house. Yeah, I disclosed her name. Yeah, I accidentally disclosed her phone number, which she lies about. And because this is, I assume, clipped from the Philip DeFranco. There's a useless guy if there ever was one. But the
well, he's usually like, I got the clip more easily. I was trying to find it, but her first excuse for doxing the Libs of TikTok was it was already done.
One of her first ones was maybe Libs of TikTok is Russian. Maybe. I mean, just look at her. She's a nut job. I mean, she's a nut. But here she is propagandizing and again on the Russiagate, Spygate, Ukraine war nonsense by saying I had to look at Libs of TikTok just in case they're foreign. While saying she's a tolerant individual, wants to defend tolerance and all the rest. Then her second excuse was some of the information was public. That's arguable in terms of how this works. It's probably not an invasion of privacy, legal tort claim for the Libs of TikTok. But its real goal wasn't Libs of TikTok. Its real goal was to intimidate anyone else from replicating Libs of TikTok. Just like the goal in the hit piece on Ari was intended to not only hit her, but to discourage anyone else from trying to enter this space. Look what happened to her if you go into this space. Also, it elevated her role as a gatekeeper. These people okay, these people not, which is exactly who and what she is. But that's the broader background, and her excuses are just lame. But in this context, her other excuse for going after Libs of TikTok is Libs of TikTok was at January 6th.
Yeah,
and everybody knows they're domestic terrorists.
Let me bring it up, Robert.
No one's been charged with that. If anybody's a domestic terrorist, Taylor Lorenz is a domestic terrorist by her definition. But but this gives an idea of how political she is, and she's held out by the New York Times and the Washington Post, not as an opinion writer, but as their fact reporting journalist, which is a crock.
I'm going to bring it up. I said you can't stop the Barnes train when he gets I'm not saying triggered in the typical sense. When Barnes gets into it, listen to this. So this is the context in which she's describing Libs of TikTok. Listen to this.
And I also thought that the fact that she claims to have been inside the barrier at the insurrection last year was notable.
It's notable.
Because, that's, the people that stormed the Capitol are essentially domestic terrorists. And so I think the fact that this woman who previously spread election fraud conspiracies says that she was there during the Capitol, live tweeted it, now sort of shaping this new groomer discourse. Again, I just thought that it met the bar for newsworthy. And
this is the same person now.
Without her role as an institutional gatekeeper promoting lies and libels on behalf of the institutions, she would be nobody. Just listen to that voice. Can you listen to that voice for longer than 2 minutes? I mean, I don't know why they always have to have that annoying voice. Just drives me in. But this is someone who probably tried to be normally influential if this is just a guess, but if that probably tried to go through the normal means of influence, failed at it, and figured out that being a libeler on behalf of institutional power would give her that recognition. Because anybody who's out there trying to pimp victim stuff like she was the week before on MSNBC, I have power and I have value because I've been a victim, made up victim stuff. But it's part of that cultish mindset, is somebody who's driven by a deep pathology that she projects onto other people. She's kind of like the Amber Heard of journalism.
I've heard that. Honestly, one of the most telling things, I listened to an interview with her and Jason, I forget what his last name is, but anyway, she was talking about how all of her experience in how she became a journalist and whatnot. And she's like, I'm paraphrasing, but she basically said, I started my own consulting firm and I did it for about a year and a half, but it's really, really hard to own your own business. Like, it's really hard. And he's like, yeah, it's hard to like think about how you're going to make payroll. And she's like, yeah, it's a lot easier to work for a company that like hires, the most expensive lawyers in the world to look after me, all that stuff. And I'm like, gosh, like for somebody that I guess that's why she has no empathy to like working entrepreneurs that had to, eat top ramen and live in their cars or whatever it might be.
More like
She
envy.
went to Swiss boarding school,
It's going to be more like envy than empathy.
So Splendiferous had asked, how often do defamation suits against MSM succeed? Robert, in the U.S., exceedingly rare, right?
Yeah, very, very difficult, at least that are published. I mean, you obviously have settlements, so you can never know for sure. But I'll put it this way. Within the legal community, the assumption is that like one of the reasons why they libeled the Covington kids is they're ordinary individuals. Even if a few of their parents have money, they're not going to have a lot of money. They're not going to mess with us as institutional media. And that was why I went public and said I represent him for free, was to equalize the playing field, and then went public on Fox and other places, said, 48 hours to retract and some other fun stuff. Which 90% of them did, to their credit, but only because normally they face no risk. They normally face no legal exposure of any kind. Because the biggest ones, like medical malpractice, nobody sues. Most people don't sue. It's just unaffordable for most people to file suit. That's the biggest hurdle by far. The lawyers cost money, and it's rare that you're going to be able to make a financial. There's not a lot of contingency lawyers in this space. Easy money is a contingency lawyer, products liability, particularly personal injury, automobile accidents. That's the cash flow. You're not going to get a big cash flow in this area. And then you have the judges protecting institutional media. Like you could sue defamation. Joe Schmo lies about you. That you could probably get recovery. But it's the New York Times. Oh man, they're the holy grail. They come up. I mean, look at what happened with Sarah Palin. The judge denies her claim, goes up on appeal. The court of appeal says, no, you were wrong. You have to reinstate her case, give her a trial. Then he interferes with the trial and says the case is crap, and he gets notified right to the jurors because they're on the notification list of what he says in the docket. And so, that's the mindset. And I've said what yeah. Well, I mean, just do some math. If you're a federal judge, particularly in certain districts in this country, do you want to upset or offend or go against the most powerful local media and national media paper in your area? Right?
So
I mean, just do a little math. Maybe it's not a coincidence. One of these days, I'll raise that explicitly in a case. I had I have a current case where, but I'll leave that alone for the time being. That's the hurdle. And it's also, they usually drag you to their jurisdiction. They're doing it in the Covington kids. That's why I'm having to appeal part of the case up to the appeals court system. But that's why it's for the person. Most lawyers would tell you it's not worth it unless you have money and you're Peter Thiel and you just don't care, like you're back in. But Hulk Hogan never would have pursued that case. But for Peter Thiel saying, I'll fund it. I'll give you everything you need to fund it. That's what changed the ball game. But it's rare that you get through the judicial bias in favor of institutional media.
And I'll just say from the Canadian British perspective, you just need to Google it. It's a lot, easier in that it occurs more often that the press is held liable, but that's because we don't have as much of we're a little bit softer on First Amendment. And in Quebec, for those of you, I've mentioned it a number of times, there can be defamation even if what the person said is true, if it was specifically done with the intent to harm. So we're unique in Quebec. But Ariadna, Marion Holtzman is asking, please tell us how we can monetarily support your guest. I'll be glad to contribute. So nice. Do you have a fundraiser?
Yeah, I have a givesendgo.com/influences.
She's using GiveSendGo, people. That's already a good sign. I'll put the link up afterwards.
I had a lot of, tech bigwigs, I think, found out about me because I filed a lawsuit against Taylor, and I was advised, just be careful because you may start a even though my thing isn't political, they could find a way to take away all the money you raise. And really, it's just about raising capital to be able to, support myself through to when the lawsuit happens and all this stuff. I mean, I appreciate that. That's really nice. And
So someone else was asking about the dog. Did I notice a Chinese crested?
He's like sleeping on the ground now.
Dog, Ariadna. No, the dog. Is it a Chinese crested or did I missee?
No, he's a mutt from Mexico, from Tijuana. My social medias are all Little Miss Jacob. So if you want to follow me there and just, stay tuned as to what happens. But yeah.
Well, no, I'm curious.
What I was going to say about the why it's so difficult, I was going to say too, is if you file in a state that has anti-SLAPP laws, I'm not a lawyer again, so basically if they dismiss your case, then you're liable if they hit you with anti-SLAPP, but you're liable for paying for all their legal fees. So like, not only are you like suing the New York Times or whoever, but then if there's an anti-SLAPP law, then you're liable for their, so it's like, not only do you not have the money, but if you lose, now you're gonna have to pay and you're gonna be in debt or destitute or whatever. So it's really scary. I mean, I wouldn't wish this to happen on anyone. And I will say so many people have reached out to me, people that weren't famous, that have had hit pieces written about them by Taylor Lorenz. One person like completely, luckily she said she's married and her husband supports her family, but she had to leave her career entirely. And those are the people where I feel like, 5% was true. And so I'm just so grateful that, at least in my eyes, like 0% was just, she got like my name spelled right, but that was about it. And she twisted, she would twist things even, and that's the really scary part, is that, can they just print lies because someone else was quoted saying this, even though she has all this proof? I mean, I don't know how all these things shake out, but
legally, no. Legally, you can't hide behind quotations, unless you're talking about a court proceeding or something like that. Unless you're fairly reporting what took place in like a congressional session, court pleading, etc. Otherwise, you can't hide behind, well, I didn't tell the lie. I just quoted somebody else telling the lie. That's not an excuse, as they found out in the Covington cases, because a lot of those were just quoting people and whatnot. But now, what are you doing every day business-wise? Are you still in the influencer space, and how is that going?
I moved to Vegas, and I basically got like an entry-level job at a hospitality company. Like answering Instagram DMs. So I definitely like was demoted, like probably got was making like a sixth of what I had been offered in a past job. And so that was very humbling, but I think at the same time, it was good that I got experience working for a corporation. And I also like mentally needed to just step away from everything that had happened and just like do something else. And in Vegas, like nobody cares about TikTok or anything like that. So I used my skill set in marketing to sort of work my way up. And now I'm, I'm trying to start a new talent agency, and I have a couple clients. It's much more difficult because this time around I'm vetting all the people. Not everybody I rep now is a TikToker. Some of them are like Katie Welch is a musician. She's amazing. I did a really cool thing where I brought Sam Asghari, which is Britney Spears's fiance, to Vegas, and Britney came. And so that was really cool. If anybody's like, well, she's a public figure, she's verified on Instagram. I got some good press because Britney came to Vegas and said she had never been treated so well by a group of people. And that was really I did that. I helped do that, is bring her. And so I think I feel like at the very least, my reputation is coming back. Hopefully people understand that I'm not an evil witch, but at the same time, it's always, when you get defamed like this, you're always thinking in the back of your mind, especially if you're a salesperson or somebody that's outwardly talking to people, in the back of your mind, you're like, did they read that article? What do they think about me? And your confidence is it just takes such a hit. But I now feel like at the very least, that was rock bottom. Like when 85 clients dump you on the same day, it's like worse than the worst breakup you've ever had in your life, especially because you care about these people, right? You're like intimately involved with their lives. And so that was extremely emotional. But now I'm like, okay, like what's Taylor gonna do? Try to cancel me again? You know, I know that I don't have any crazy skeletons in my closet. And if I gotta go on TV or like, you know, just like Johnny Depp and expose everything, I feel okay about it. But, and you know, not to compare myself with anybody, but I definitely have been watching the Johnny Depp trial, because it's like, I think at one point he said, I'm upset. They were trying to paint him out as an obsessed ex-husband. And he's like, I'm just obsessed with the truth. And I can't I really understand what that's like, because it's infuriating to have someone destroy your character. And after so many years of you know, working for free for people, helping people, and you're like, that's not who I am.
No,
So.
and for what? For a story, for one story, and arguably to make her handlers happy and her employers happy. It's just, everybody should read John Ronson's "So You've Been Publicly Shamed" to appreciate, like, also the absolute callous lack of a soul that it takes to destroy someone in the absence of any necessity to do it. Project Veritas and James O'Keefe, you know, he says it well. If you're going to do it, there has to be a compelling reason above and beyond an article to get clicks that day. You know, and now she's doing it to libs of TikTok, and she's justified it to herself by saying she's essentially a domestic terrorist. So anything goes. I'm only republishing what, you know, some small account with 7,000 followers published, so I can put it on blast to the Washington Post or the New York Times or whatever.
Well, and I think that there's a problem too with, you know, that article she did about me got her to another level. And then this thing with libs of TikTok gets her to another level. And you have to understand, she's giving comment to 2020 on stories about technology, TMZ, now MSNBC, CNN. She is going to, she's probably trying in the trajectory of being like a Gary Vee type of person, but Gary Vee is the complete opposite of what she is. And it's dangerous, because if you talk about older people that are in power and have influence, if they're listening to her as she's the end all be all of not just TikTok, just technology, social media, and youth culture, that's really dangerous. And I believe that there's a chance that it's possible that, you know, before I was never like an active public figure, but maybe she thought, well, she's on her way to eventually she could be the person that TMZ is calling for comment on XYZ, and we got to take that person out. I mean, listen, this is just my thoughts, or, you know, what other people honestly have told me. But it's just dangerous. And I think that if she continues without any type of accountability, what's next?
Well, we'll end on this right after I say that what she did was probably good for UTA as well, because they picked up a lot of big names that you, as getting in at the ground level, had what's the word? You didn't scoop them. You were there at the ground level and found them early. But okay, first of all, Ariadna, before we check out, I'm going to end it with something from a tweet from Tim Pool saying she'll get the spotlight that she deserves, and Tim Pool gave it to her. Thank you very much. I'll put the links to your social in the pinned comment. Everybody knows this story. You may have a limited interest in the story. Chat, people watching, it's interesting nonetheless. The business, I can see people being reluctant or skeptical about the business. Anything involving young people making the decisions they make, fine. When it comes to the defamation, the hit pieces, how the New York Times operates, what they do to target who they perceive to be threats, competition, and they do it with impunity. I mean, out of principle, and now that we know who Taylor Lorenz is, Godspeed on your journey, Ariadna. But
yeah,
I'm not optimistic, but who knows? We
well, the New York Times hasn't lost a defamation lawsuit in like 50 years or something. So I guarantee you, if Taylor Lorenz caused them to, you know, be in this position, it's going to be a pretty big deal to follow along. Like, this TikTok story ruined our streak of 50 years. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for. Obviously, I know it's going to be challenging, but I really appreciate you having me on. And Robert, you have such like great, like, you totally get it, I feel like, with your explanations of it. So yeah, we'll see what happens next. But
stick around after this. I'm gonna end it. I haven't ended the stream with a video, but we're gonna do it today just because it's apropos. Where is it? When you the Washington Post. Here we go. Let's just end it with this. And stick around, Taylor. We'll say our proper goodbyes afterwards.
I wonder if Viva. Yeah.
I did everything wrong. Forget it, people. Anyhow, there you go. That's what's going on there.
Yeah, Tim Pool bought a electronic sign in New York City that reminded the Washington Post that their democracy dies in darkness language, that democracy is dying in the darkness that is the deep shade of Taylor Lorenz doxing libs of TikTok and her otherwise history. She's just think Amber Heard of journalism, just a lot older, much older.
Okay, Ariadna, Robert, stick around. People, tomorrow, live streaming from Ottawa somewhere. It might not be good. I might just be walking and getting Tim Hortons, but I'll be in Ottawa tomorrow. Thanks for being here, people. See you soon enough. Ariadna, Robert, stick around. We'll say our public goodbyes. Peace out, peeps.